many of us are out in a holiday season thinking about toys for children, Legos, erector sets, Barbies, et cetera, which is going to make you very unpopular if you're buying the predictable Barbie gift for the daughter, et cetera, because sometimes the messages that we send and what we buy, what we think about, what are the building blocks, if you will, of young people shaping their identities. Debbie Sterling is the CEO and founder of GoldieBlox, has set out 2 years ago to encourage more women to enter male-dominated fields like math and engineering. She decided the way to do that is to invent a toy that teaches little girls to build and innovate just like the boys. Cue her GoldieBlox construction sets. She's here to tell Mary Louise Kelly more about this. Please welcome them to the stage.
So we want to start by making sure that everybody can visualize this toy that you have invented, GoldieBlox, what a GoldieBlox kit looks like. It's a toy that you get when you buy it, a girl, Goldie, with a tool belt, who solves problems by building things or breaking them, as we're about to see in a quick video to get us rolling.
You are beauty, and beauty is perfection. 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 You are beauty, and beauty is perfection.
Keeps beating like a hammer.
There we go. Yeah. I gotta say, that makes me want to give you like a girl power fist bump to kick us off. There we go. It also makes me think we should kick off our high heels to have this next conversation.
I know, we're both guilty, aren't we?
I think yours are a little strappy, so I'll let you keep them on while we get going. But that's the idea, right? Is to charge young girls with this idea, girl power, female empowerment. How did you get the idea that a toy was the way to do this?
Well, I studied engineering at Stanford. Actually, David Kelly, who spoke earlier, was my advisor.
Oh, okay.
And there were very few women in the program. And there was
This was when? When did you graduate?
in 2005.
Okay.
And I was talking with a friend who majored in engineering with me, and she argued that her interest in the field started as a little girl playing with her older brother's construction toys. And those were boys' toys, and she would have rather played with dolls, but her parents, she was the fourth child, and they weren't buying toys anymore. Right. So she was stuck with those. But she talked about how they made her want to be an engineer. And I thought, it's interesting because in so many of our engineering classes, we use Legos and erector sets and construction toys as prototyping materials. And I, in fact, growing up as a little girl, was the dolls and dress up and pony kind of girl and didn't have exposure to those things and was actually at kind of a big disadvantage when I got to college. I had a lot of catching up to do. And I realized that maybe there was a connection between the toys and media that we consume as children and the skills that we develop and the kinds of things we want to be when we grow up. And when you look at the world through the eyes of little kids, you've got boys brands like Handy Manny and Thomas the Train and Bob the Builder and all the boys construction toys that get them interested in building and conquering the world and being superheroes. And the girls' stuff is literally, even today, ironing boards and tea parties.
Home sinks where you get to wash the dishes after you've fed your dolls.
Yeah. And from that moment that we had that first conversation, and I walked into the toy store in the pink aisle, I just knew that something had to be done. And even though I was a pink aisle girl, I had more inside me that I was capable of. And I never would have discovered it had I not had a math teacher one day suggest it to me. And that changed my life. And so I thought, well, maybe I could be that spark to little girls, and they could discover an interest in these things at a much earlier age. And in a world where they're completely inundated by standards of beauty and princesses and being perfect, there's an opportunity to show an alternative lifestyle. And not saying that you can't be a princess, but you can also rock a tool belt.
Let me follow up on a few things you said. One is the obvious challenge, which is you admit you were a pink aisle girly girl, and yet you ended up an engineering graduate from Stanford who started a successful tech startup. I mean, is it so necessary to promote the kind of toy that you've created to help girls get to where you got without it?
There's a huge need. Only 14% of engineers in the U.S. are women, and less than 25% of graduates in a STEM, science or engineering, technology, or math degree are women. So there's a huge gender gap, and really the source of it is a pipeline problem. And I got lucky in that I really did feel like I fell into engineering by accident, but growing up as a little girl, I had no interest in it. When my math teacher told me she thought I should be an engineer, I said, ew, why does she think I'd want to be a train driver? And when I told my mom I wanted to major in engineering, she said, ew, why? That sounds so boring. And most of my female classmates were wondering why I chose that major. They didn't understand why I wouldn't want to do a warm and fuzzy, they called it, major. And the years that I studied in college, in most of my classes, the vibe was it's a weed-out class. And it was always entirely dominated by men. It was very difficult to stay in there with that kind of attitude and mentality as a woman, not feeling like I belonged. So there's this huge need. And the thing is, there's this stereotype that an engineer is supposed to look and act a certain way. That an engineer is, a white old man in a lab coat, sitting alone with no friends at a computer who has an IQ off the charts. And that's an intimidating archetype that it doesn't appeal to not just girls, but many people.
Yeah. So you're saying shortage of role models is a huge problem. But I mean, I don't think anybody in this audience would oppose the idea of empowered, smart, assertive girls, assuming there are no ISIS, Islamic State militants out there in our audience today. But how do you prove that any toy does that, creates assertive, empowered girls? I mean, how do you measure it, whether it's working?
So, well, the short answer is that there's no one quick solution. There's no one toy that would ever do that. But with GoldieBlox, what I'm building is a lot more than a toy. It's really a movement around creating this role model character. And her name is Goldie, and she's in her overalls and her tool belt, and she's sort of inspired by Punky Brewster and Louise and kind of the Matilda, the cool, smart girls that I had as role models growing up that seem to be lacking now in children's media. And I found that by telling these stories of this girl builder who tries to solve problems by building things, and she's not a genius, and she screws up all the time, but she doesn't give up, that's a really accessible way to get girls interested in building and technology and engineering, to give them a narrative and a story and a character they can look up to.
And you found that was a key thing as you were doing the research, that girls, the way we girls play has to do with telling stories.
It was very interesting that time and time again you could see boys just sort of building for the sake of building, and the little girls would want to know why. Who's it for? Where are we? What's it all about? It's funny because I can actually really relate to that. And by providing the stories and the role models, it gives girls an entry point to get into things that were otherwise sort of male-dominated. And through toys, the great thing about the toys themselves, because I remember when I first started the company, multiple people would say, why don't you just make an app? And which would have been a lot easier. But there's something really educational about construction toys in the way that they force you to kind of tinker and build things with your hands and develop spatial and motor skills that you simply can't get on a screen. So I started there. But as we expand now and grow GoldieBlox into a series of toys and entertainment and games, there's all kinds of skills that we can teach, whether it be in mechanical engineering or coding or electrical engineering. They really just become tools toward getting this interest in these fields that are becoming kind of table stakes skills if you want to get a job in our modern economy.
Yeah. What about, we just saw the girl in the video with the hammer smashing the construction line. She's cute. She's clearly spent some time in the hair salon before they filmed that video. She's no troll. I guess my question is, can't you be girly and still build cool things? Can't you show up in high heels and still have a smart conversation? Are they exclusive?
Well, I think that's actually one of the things that has been really appealing about GoldieBlox to a lot of people is that, because a lot of times in children's media, first of all, for every 15 engineer characters, there's usually only one female. And usually the female is the nerd with glasses that you don't really want to be. Mm-hmm. And with GoldieBlox, we spent a lot of time on developing Goldie and her friends to be appealing characters. We wanted to break these stereotypes that the engineer is the nerd with no friends and no social life. We wanted them to be cool, and we want girls to want to emulate them. So you can definitely be both. And in fact, it's less of a focus on what you look like and what you're wearing, and more about how you think and what you're capable of doing.
Do you ever see boys picking up the GoldieBlox toys?
There are a lot of boys who steal their sister's GoldieBlox.
Right. No matter what the toy, that went without saying.
They don't care. They love it, actually. It's really funny, which I think is fantastic because so many parents have told me, and I agree, that it's great for their sons to admire a female role model. There's this, again, another set of conventional wisdom that in children's media, when you have a main character who's a boy, it can appeal to both genders. But if the main character is a girl, it's only for girls. So this is another way that we're sort of shaking that up as well. And it's fun to see boys thinking that Goldie is cool and wanting to be friends with her.
So I was trawling around on Amazon this morning, and there are, as I'm sure you know, rave reviews for GoldieBlox. Congratulations. But let me allow you to respond to some of the less positive ones that are up there. If there's a theme, it's that the toy doesn't leave enough room for creativity. There's one mom who writes, after my daughter figured it out, she thinks she's done with it. Why do it again?
So that's something that, it's interesting. Construction set actually has unlimited opportunities in what you can build. And one of the things that we found, particularly in testing with girls, and a difference actually between girls and boys that we found, we saw that through bringing in a story and a narrative, that was a way to get girls interested. And actually a difference between boys and girls is girls would follow the story exactly and do it. Not every girl, I'm generalizing, but most of them would get very interested in doing it perfectly, exactly as the story is told. Whereas the boy would oftentimes throw the book away and just completely make up, whatever with the pieces.
Isn't that the heart of what you're trying to get at, though? Have the girl throw the book away, too, and just...
Well, absolutely.
Build what she wants to build?
That's harder. And so what we're doing is, and that's something that we've noticed. And so there are a few ways that we tackle that. One is by creating this role model character, Goldie. She's messy and doesn't get everything right, but shows that when she keeps trying and trying that she can succeed in maybe the way you didn't even expect. We can bring that into the narrative. We've also put in a lot of appendix things as sort of thought starters, which we've updated so our products have that. And the third thing that we did in response to that feedback is actually we started creating these YouTube videos that it's really cute. We have this main character, they're live action, and there's this girl who says, "Welcome to the block shop," and each video has these different things that you can build out of GoldieBlox, and we're now releasing them weekly. So again, for the girls who aren't, as inclined to jump into open-ended play, we're providing more and more thought starters. So eventually, once they get the hang of it, then they come up with they eventually make their own stuff and create their own stories out of it, which you're right, is the goal.
It's been how long since the first GoldieBlox kit was available for sale? I mean, how long have you been open for business?
About 2 years.
About 2 years. So the target market, the little girls, are still little. I mean, how are you going to measure? Do you have some sort of mechanism you're starting to think of? How are we going to track these girls who were playing at GoldieBlox when they were 6? What programs they're choosing as they head off to university in 10, 15 years?
Yeah, it's my dream that 10 years down the line, we start getting letters from girls who said, I played with GoldieBlox and now I plan to major in X, whatever that is. If it's engineering or otherwise, that it gave me the confidence or it opened up a new interest I didn't know I had. We're starting to think about ways to track and measure that. But already what we've been doing is creating all of these great products that now we have products that span from as young as 3 to as old as 12, which is really, really exciting.
A big age range. Let me open it up because I know a lot. If you have questions, my Twitter account's been going crazy with people who have questions to put to you. Let's start right here.
Yes, my name is Ben Konak, and with Empty Teach. I'm curious if the classroom, if GoldieBlox has gotten into the classroom and as an online community to help the girls support each other on their endeavor with this.
I'm just going to repeat that because it was a little hard to hear at the beginning. At GoldieBlox, is it in classrooms? Are you pitching it to schools?
We've had so much interest from classrooms, and a lot of teachers have been bringing it in, and we've been offering teacher discounts. Our main focus as a company up until this point, because one of the hardest things is when you have so many opportunities and so many things that you want to do, you just have to pick, well, I'm going to focus on this now and open up these other things later. So we've been really focused on the consumer kind of retail space for GoldieBlox to start, but we are actually starting a nonprofit arm to the organization where we're going to be creating GoldieBlox inspired curriculum that we'll be sharing with educators. And in fact, we've just started, you can check it out, posting some of the projects on Instructables under the name of the Oakland Toy Lab. So we're starting to do that because we actually have great kind of educators on our team and storytellers and people who have become experts now at getting girls in particular interested in these things. So that's something to kind of come, and we found that kind of the best way we can really allocate resources by doing it through a nonprofit arm.
And you're solely focused on U.S. market right now, is that right? Because you'd have all these different, cultural differences as you think about maybe spreading this beyond North America or the West.
Well, it's interesting, but because, in this day and age, we've created so many videos that have gone viral online that we now have this international demand for GoldieBlox. This year, we did expand into the UK and Australia, English-speaking markets, and we're now putting together our strategy for how we expand globally. But it's important to me that before we go in kind of other places that we do localize it appropriately. So.
And what have been the challenges for doing that, say, in the UK? How's it different?
So currently, it's the same in the UK and Australia, and we'll see.
Right.
So far, it seems to be going pretty well, actually, because there's such a huge demand for it. But we're working on our strategy now and it is just a matter of expanding our team to, localize in areas where we need to and make sure that there's enough demand in each market to justify the expense to roll it out there.
To roll it out there. Another question.
Hey there.
See one up here.
Hey, I've been looking at the website and Amazon just now because my niece is turning 8 this weekend, and I'm trying to figure out what I should order her. And so I'm wondering, wondering between the Builder's Kit and the action figure and some of your other products, what you'd recommend, and then maybe you could take that to lead into how you think about product development and some of the things you're doing moving forward, and your engineering team and all of that.
Sure. So if she's turning 8, I would recommend the Builder's Survival Kit. If she still plays with dolls, then the action figure, but and it just depends. Some 8-year-olds don't play with dolls anymore, some do. As we think about our product development, we're actually currently trying to stay very focused on really nailing a sort of a smaller age group, which is 6 to 9. So your daughter's perfect for it. The reason why we're choosing that age group to start with is because ultimately we want to expand the GoldieBlox brand. So we've kind of been talking about it like from cradle to college. We want to support and motivate girls along the way. But we've also seen and heard a lot of research that if we want to get that spectrum, the mistake would be to start by making it a preschool toy, because then an 8 or a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old would never want to play with it because they would think it was babyish. So we've decided strategically we're really focusing on the older age groups for the short term, and then again once we nail that, we plan to broaden.
From cradle to college, you heard it here. Okay, I'm going to close with a fist bump for you. Here we go. Thank you so much, Debbie Sterling.